They get degrees. I work on my chicken sounds.
Listen, it's marketable. You can do voiceovers and stuff.
Really marketable.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Tuesday, and is it Tuesday? It's Tuesday, yes. 2020, and we are still here.
That's how we say the date now.
Tuesday in 2020.
The day and the year.
Yep.
It's Wednesday, or it's Thursday on 2020.
We're gonna look back on this and be like, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? Hope y'all are good out there. Today, I don't know what we're talking. Well, we're going to talk about politics today, and not in a sense of the sort of
everyone clicks off.
Yeah, everybody's done. Oh my gosh! But it seems like there's the aftermath now of the election and the division, and it feels like we kind of like, where do we go? What do we do? And it feels like to me on social media, like I post something very divisive, gets 100 likes and 10,000 shares. I post something that says, hey, remember we're all humans.
Yeah.
And I get mad comments. Not really.
Yeah,
but like that's kind of where we are. We're
not ready to give up this fight yet.
Fully in on the, and like I get it. Like I understand. And I think what we're having right now is this sort of moment where there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain, and we as humans have been hurting each other, and there are some deep hurts, and I think that we need to have those hurts aired. I don't think we can move on. I think we've tried to do this in America. We've tried to move on and kind of cover up the deep pain, the deep harm that we've done to one another, and just move on. And that's doing none of us any good.
Yeah.
We sort of like, I think we need to have like a truth and reconciliation committee, like in South Africa after apartheid.
Yeah.
To be like, here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. Here's how I was hurt. And we need to open that in order to move on. But we're not. So like, that's what needs to happen. We're probably going to do what we've done in America for our existence and just try to move on without any of that. But today, it just like some of my thoughts. These are just thoughts of mine. I am so into politics, and I think about it a lot, and I am in it to some degree. I was in it to some degree. But squarely, I'm in the church and in a pastor. So sometimes that can be a little weird, but I see sort of like I love the strategy of it all. I love the strategy, and I remember back in when Trump and like I openly like I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump fan. I'm for people of color. I'm for the LGBTQ community. I'm for immigrants. I am for the marginalized, those who have been oppressed, and I want to work, vote, give, raise money, like for that. But I also kind of like see the bigger strategy, and like that's what's really interesting to me, the bigger strategy of things.
Well, and in our conversations, you have a lot of people in your life who did vote for Trump, and you come from an area that was definitely full on Trump. Same with me. So I think you do have the perspective of that whole mindset of folks, and that's important. I think that's an important piece of being able to talk about it from both sides, being able to understand both sides. Yeah,
and so like I don't agree with that,
right?
But I do like understand people in rural communities have lost nearly everything.
Yeah.
And life is hard in rural communities. And in so many ways, life in a rural community and life in an ultra-urban community there's so many similarities.
Yeah.
Like lack of education, lack of health care, lack of jobs.
Yeah.
But it comes like to tribalism, really, where like this group is like me, and I'm going to stand with them and believe that they've had the right answer.
Yeah.
And so, like, how do we get through that? So, like, for me, what's really fascinating is how do we bring about long-term systematic change for the common good,
Yeah.
for the flourishing of people, both in the rural community and the urban community, the Latino community, the LGBTQ community, like everyone. And I believe it's possible. Fundamentally, I believe it's possible. I think tribalism gets in the way, and then we, like what we're seeing right now, we begin to hate each other, we make fun of each other, we diminish each other, and like all of that is not, like I see that progressives are doing that now, and I just look and I'm like, this is the thing y'all hated about the other side, and now we're doing it to them.
Oh, it's the same. It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
I think I have had to stay off of social media, except for, like, I've had to snooze so many people that I really respect, that I really think are smart, because of not necessarily what they're saying, but the way that they are saying it. And they are jabbing each other. And they really are starting, it seems like there is zero respect for each other. And instead, they sort of two-dimensionalize them as idiots. Or all of you who voted for this other candidate, and I'm talking in all races, you must feel that you must be like this. And I want to sort of be like, okay, well, I can guarantee you that I know some real intelligent people that voted that way. Have you considered that maybe there are other ways to process this, or there are other reasons? But there's so much vitriol, and there's so much sort of like, I really dislike it when somebody paints an entire group of people in the same color. You have no idea. Yeah,
you have none, because like there sort of data's coming out of elections now, and it says like many more Latinos this time voted Republican.
Yes.
Many more black men voted Republican. So like you're like, whoa, okay, let's take the data and be like, well, what's going on there?
Yeah. There's a lot more to everybody's life than you can conceptualize of.
Yeah.
So you can't look at this whole side and say, well, y'all are all just hateful idiots.
Yeah. And politics is ultimately local. And it's like where you are right in that moment. Like I live in a certain space in a certain place.
Right.
That's not like what life is like wherever you are in your life, in your place. And we do vote for our self-interest. And I don't think it's proper for anybody to say, you're voting against your own self-interest. It's like life, people are really complex, and life is really complex, and maybe there is something that's really important to you, but it's a bit like self-righteous of me to say, well, you're voting against your own self-interest when you vote for this person. Like, I don't know your life. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know in this moment what you really need.
And wouldn't it just be better if we could, and I know some people do this, that when somebody votes the opposite of you, instead of immediately attacking them, ask why. Just why? Like, I'm not, this is not an attack. You don't need to defend yourself. Just, I'm super interested in why you chose to vote in that direction. Because to me, it looks like this. And you can say that. Like, if we could engage and we could actually humanize one another and really find out, like, well, okay, so what's your reasoning? Because we aren't doing that.
We're not doing that. And there are so many, I think, like, what I always remember about politics, like, I think a couple fundamental things is, like, in politics, I learned in organizing that we should take the approach that there's no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. If you really want to get change happened, if you make an enemy out of somebody, like, you're never going to be able to work with that person ever again. And ultimately, like, you're not going to get things done. Like, look, we're like 51-49 in America. We're getting nothing done anywhere. And we're all suffering because of it. But so, like, understanding in this moment, that's how you're voting. But, like in the next moment, I've got to do the hard work to convince you to vote like this, and that's hard work. And also, like, there are so many economic forces that both sides believe. There are definite economic realities that separate Republicans from Democrats. And some people fundamentally believe in that side, and some people fundamentally believe in this side. Yeah. And what you do in life could change that. You know, it could affect that. If you're a business owner, you might genuinely be like, oh, like my business, like I feel like I won't survive if that person, even socially, I agree with him, but
yeah.
So there's so many forces at play.
There are so many forces at play.
And it's really hard. I love this quote. I heard this on a podcast the other day by Robert Wright. And Robert Wright, he's basically like an evolutionary psychologist. And so he said this: the human mind is not designed to see the world clearly. What? What? Like
wait a second, but I mean, mine is.
Wait a minute. He said the human mind is not designed to see the world clearly. It is designed for survival. And so, one piece that he used was that our brains overestimate the speed at which large objects are approaching us. So, like, we think that a large object is coming faster than it actually is, and our brain is tricking us into believing that thing's coming really fast. Because why? Because you better get out of the way. Your brain knows you better get the heck out of here, and I'm going to give you some more time to do it. And so he goes through this litany of different ways that the mind is tricking you in order to get you to do what the mind believes, what the brain believes will help you survive.
Yeah.
He said happiness is way down on the list of the brain's priorities for survival.
Some of us know that well.
Like, the brain is not interested in happiness.
Right.
The brain is interested in the survival of you and your offspring. And so, what it's going to get you to do...
worry, think about the future, never be content.
Never be content. Because if you're content, you'll stop eating, you'll stop pursuing, you'll stop having sex. And the brain's like, no, you got to keep doing these things. And so the brain's tricking you all the time. So, like, this blows my mind that we don't see the world clearly.
Yeah.
What? We think we do. We think we see everything absolutely the way it is, perfectly clear. We see truth.
Right.
We have the barometer of truth. No, we don't.
Yeah.
Our brain convinces us of that truth, and then we do this thing of self-justification. This is the work of the brain.
Yeah.
For you to justify your belief so that you can create a framework around it that you can survive. And so we're left with this situation like, oh wow, if our brain's against us and we don't always see the world clearly, maybe we should be more open to
totally
other people, to other situations, to other things. Maybe we shouldn't like hunker down like a tick in a dog's ear so deeply that like we know this thing.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we need a little more humility in the way that we approach the world.
And it doesn't. It's really interesting. It's like, it's okay you can still hold a belief very strongly and engage with somebody who feels differently than you do. You're not giving away your belief by talking about it or by having this little thing in your head all the time that you might not be right. That's where growth happens. But don't we want to grow? Isn't that like part of what we want? So and standing up for what they believe is right? And it's not that you can't stand up for something while still wanting to develop or evolve that idea. And so it doesn't actually help you at all to build a steel fence around these ideas. That stunts you in the end. Because if we all did that, gosh, think about if you had done that when you were 18 years old and you had just ideas that you had.
Yeah. And think about like the people that have come in your life and have helped you change an opinion.
Yes.
So think of your own life. You weren't like 18 years old. You don't think the same things about your life at 18, about the world, about politics.
God.
And who in our life, I think of people in my life that have helped mold my political view of the world, and political, I mean like a big view of the world. They were people who disagreed, like they didn't think the same things that I did.
Yeah.
But they welcomed me and showed me, nudged me, held me, conversed with me. The people that were like, no, you were wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, heck with you.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a conversation with you.
Right.
Punk. But like, so if we want to change, we're going to need to do that work. And that's hard work because it really comes, like the rubber comes to the road when our friends are being oppressed or we are being, like, genuinely, there's a group of people, us, our friends, our community is being oppressed. That's where it's really, really hard to have that. And so we almost like simultaneously need, like, we do need different, like some people to be like, yes, we're like, this is life or death to us. And then we also need the workers that are out on the other, like, removed a little bit, that are working to convince the other side. Like, hey, look what's going on over here. Let me show you. Let me take you. Let me introduce you. And so, like, what I'm seeing out there is sort of a firing squad at anybody who is trying to build bridges.
Yeah, we've moved past the point of just creating an enemy of people who disagree with us, and now we're creating enemies of people who agree with us, but just not as strongly. Or who are willing to engage with someone. Like, where does that line stop? It's you're right. The bridge builders are now getting attacked, and that's not okay. We have receded even further in our ability to engage with one another. If we are attacking our own sort of people who share our own ideals, who are just willing to shake somebody's hand across the aisle. Like, it's almost like if you aren't militant about it, then you aren't part of this. I have a big problem with that. Yeah.
And so, like, and so it's like also hard for the bridge builders because, like, genuinely, if we are for, like for me, I mean, I have some friends and family, and I know that their votes hurt my friends.
Right.
That the way that they see the world hurt people that I deeply, deeply care about.
Yeah.
That's hard for me to go now engage them. But that's my work.
Yeah.
That's my work, to hold these two things in tension, and to be somebody who goes to that community that they know me and, like, I grew up with them, to be like, I want to tell y'all some stories.
Yeah.
I want to have a conversation with you in a way that you will understand.
Yeah.
That makes you comfortable, but also helps you to see what's happening in the world that you don't understand, that you don't see.
If we don't engage, how do any of us grow? How do any of us grow? I think I've seen some people who are, in some way, sort of calling for you to differently than you did from your life. Like, well, we just can't agree. It's not like a flavor of ice cream. You know, this is life or death stuff, and if you see the world that way, then I can't be part of your life anymore. But, like, I wouldn't have all that many people left in my life if I did that. And so, like, we can't, that sort of whole idea of just cutting people out, first of all, that is a whole thing in itself, and I hate that idea that we cut people out that aren't easy and wonderful to be with and agree with everything that we believe in. But gosh, if we did that, like, where's the growth then? You know, we're just gonna and then there's no discourse. There are no bridges. We can't live that way. It's like the work of politics is to live in tension. To have what you really believe, but also be working to support your allies, but also be working to convince your adversaries. And this is really hard work. And I don't think that we will accomplish what we want to accomplish if we cut people out. Because that to me is sort of like this emotional sort of, and politics is just, it's a game. It's a game. Yes.
And in the biggest sense of the word, you know, it's like a chess game.
Yeah.
And not like a game like hide and seek or like kids. In such a way that's gonna get the result that you ultimately want to get.
It's a chess game that's been going on for 240
for a long
years.
time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it has always been evolving in strategy, evolving in players, trying to match or predict sort of the culture. What are people going to want now? How do we get what we need from them? It's so deep, it's so long. Just a couple of ideas over here that don't match a couple of ideas over here, and we just like vote for the idea we like best, is to really devalue the depth of this whole thing.
Yeah, it is deep, and it's really super complicated because it affects lives in real ways. And there are communities that are being affected in terrible ways right now that we want ultimate, quick result change. And so we have to fight for those changes. Quick. We got to put pressure on our politicians. But also we at the same time, like holding tension, we got to have the long game in mind too. And the only way to really bring common good is to get people to work together on legislation that's going to impact people's lives who are being oppressed and marginalized right now. And the reality is, in America, we don't have a 60%, 70% sort of mandate majority. We are 51-49, barely. And so like the only way we're ever going to help communities that are being oppressed and marginalized is to begin to change some of that, to move public opinion from 51-49 to 60-40.
Yeah.
So that we can truly
make stuff happen
for communities that are deeply suffering.
And it's going to be those bridge builders that are our most valuable people right now. Like, it's going to be them who are going out, like you said, and helping change public opinion, who are engaging with the other side so that we can all sort of start to see things maybe a little bit differently. We need those people, and to demonize them is to cut ourselves off from ever getting any work done.
Yeah, and I think that to some people that's like, well, that makes us more modern. I don't think so. I think you can be boldly progressive, boldly, like wherever you want to be, and have that position, and to be like, we're moving people over there. It doesn't mean like we're gonna have to compromise on everything.
Right? No.
I was thinking this morning of, and I know we're getting long, running out of time, but I was thinking this morning of Jesus and the Samaritans. And the Samaritans, we all know, the Jewish people, like they didn't get along. Jews hated Samaritans, and Samaritans were weaker people. And so here the Jews were sort of in the middle. They had Samaritans that were weaker than them. But the Romans were oppressing the Jews. But the Jews could not fight against the Romans. Like, you die. The Romans would kill you.
Yeah.
But they could sort of punish the Samaritans in some way. And Jesus was constantly telling the Jews, in all sorts of different parables, stories, love your Samaritans.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sort of this proxy for... like, we can't openly talk about the Romans the way that we want to talk about the Romans because we're oppressed.
Because they were the real issue.
They were the real issue.
Yeah.
The Romans were the real problem. But I can tell you how to engage your neighbors that are lesser than you.
Yeah.
Lesser than you, it's socially. That you can support them. And together, if you support them, then, you will be able to engage this bigger structure.
Yeah.
But if you're just picking each other off all the time, what do you got? And I see that a lot in sort of the ways that people engage rural folks.
Yeah.
And
seeing them as less than.
Yeah. Seeing them less than. I see it a lot the way that people engage with evangelicals.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not evangelical. I think that they completely misunderstand Scripture and have done a lot of harm to society. But again, like, how do we change that public opinion? How do we change their viewpoint on a litany of issues? Because, like, if we're honest, there's a whole lot of evangelicals in America.
Yeah.
They're the biggest Christian movement. They're the biggest religious bloc in America.
Yeah.
And so, like, how are we gonna shift that?
Yeah.
And so that's what I think about a lot. And I don't think we shift that by scapegoating them, by coming hard against them. I think we have to say, like, here's what we are. Here's how you are. Here's how your viewpoints hurt me.
Yeah. Here's how you have contributed. And that's holding people accountable is not demonizing them.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay to hold folks accountable. Absolutely. It is when you turn them into something they are not, so that it's easier for you to fire an arrow in their face.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem, and that's what I feel like we're seeing all the time. But holding a group of people who had and being able to show how they very clearly contributed to an issue, that's something we should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like saying that a person who you put them out on a meme on Facebook, and that they're they don't have all their teeth, and they're sitting on a porch in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And like we make a meme about them,
right,
of their stupidity, and they're the the voter block, and that's just mean.
Yeah, that's mean.
That's ugly. Person sitting on the porch with maybe lost some teeth has an immense amount of local knowledge about a whole variety of different things, that if you got lost in the woods in West Virginia, you would die and he would live.
Yeah, exactly. Or has a really fascinating life and story that you just know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
I think about this a lot. I mean, with particularly evangelicals. There are a lot of evangelicals in my life. I grew up in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is easy for even me, who knows and dearly love people who have certain viewpoints, to imagine or feel that I'm smarter than them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true. I'm not smarter than them. I feel differently than they do, but I'm not smarter than
Mm-hmm.
them. And I think that's one thing we do, is we imagine these people who feel differently than we do just don't have the same information.
Mm-hmm.
They just have, they're just not as intelligent. We know, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't know. And that's like sort of a classic brain thing, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to be able to trust your own self over someone else. You have to imagine that they're dumber than you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you imagine that they're at the same level of intelligence as you, then you have to give credence to what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I even find myself doing that. Like, they're not as smart as I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's not true.
Yeah.
I have to be able to see them as fully developed humans,
Mm-hmm.
because they are.
Yeah.
Fully loved and deeply loved by God, and also bearers of God's image.
Mm-hmm.
And when I start to see them that way, then I can sort of isolate my feelings about them just to their ideas or what they believe, instead of them as humans,
Mm-hmm.
them as people. I can still love them as people.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't do that, how are we ever going to work together?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it comes back to like what I grew up in. For me, what I grew up in is, for a lot of people talking about the LGBTQ community, my evangelical friends that I grew up in, and saying, well, they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know that this is hurting their life.
Yeah.
And we want to help them out of it, to help them understand the way that God wants them to live.
Yeah.
And now, so looking on that, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And no, that's absolutely wrong.
If anybody doesn't know anything, it's y'all.
And so switching it, if we turn that around and be like, the only way I believe that, I think the way that I approach it is like, okay, I don't agree with you, not you, but the person, I don't agree with you. I think the way that you see the world is very damaging to my friends, to my community. The way that you vote, the way that you fight for things is extremely damaging. But I'm going to seek your flourishing. That doesn't mean I've got to agree with you. That doesn't mean I have to placate you. That doesn't mean that we don't have an argument or discussion.
Right.
But I am going to seek your flourishing.
Mm-hmm. And you can't seek someone's flourishing and call them out publicly in a way that damages their character or, two-dimensionalizes them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not seeking someone's flourishing.
Yeah. This is really hard in this moment. And our brains are all in tribalism.
Yeah.
But for me, I think about, how do we get the result that we ultimately want?
Big
Flourishing
goals.
For marginalized communities.
Yeah.
How do we get kids out of cages? How do we get truly full social support for the LGBT community?
Yeah.
How do we get living wage and equal wealth distribution for Black and brown communities in America? Like, how do we get that? How do we get the police to stop shooting Black folks in America? How do we get those things? And I think that takes building coalitions that are really big and allies board, both sides. We got to do the work that is hard up front. We got to have bridge builders who are bringing in new recruits to the movement. Like, it is so difficult to get change.
But you cannot learn anything when you are defending yourself. We know this. The brain cannot absorb new information when it is defending itself. Mm-hmm. So if we keep fighting and we keep pushing the other side to be defensive, nothing can happen. Yeah. We just can't.
Yeah. Because then you're like fight or flight mode.
That's right.
People get in fight or flight mode. And that's like basically where we're all at right now. Mm-hmm. We're in fight or flight mode and we can't process the world. Our brains just are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so, like, this is what I think about. Now, I'm just blurbing today, blah, 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 blah. And maybe some things I said, people will be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. But I hope you'll give me grace if I said something out of line or, because, like, I am ultimately interested in social change that empowers marginalized and oppressed communities.
Yes.
That is that's why I do church. That's why I'm a pastor. That's why I engage in politics. And I think about it all the time. But I think, like, some of the approach that we're taking right now, it feels like our brains are just not processing the world in the way that in a way that's going to be beneficial. Maybe beneficial to our survival, but not to our happiness, not to the long-term goals that we need. And that's not everybody. I'm not saying everybody. Mm-hmm. Just sort of, yeah. So that's it. That's all I got today. So love your neighbor, as Jesus said. Samaritans, love your neighbor, which is going to mean you love your Roman neighbor, which is the hardest. But it's the work that we have to do.
Yep.
It's a hard time right now. We're really divided, really super divided, but there's hope that we can come together. We've done it before. We've got over this stuff again. So go do that hard work. Go lift somebody up. Go seek somebody's flourishing. Both people you agree with and people you don't agree with.
Try to engage in a respectful conversation with someone who feels differently on a particular issue than you do. It doesn't mean you're going to change your mind, but it is always good to try to understand someone else's perspective.
Yeah, and one thing for me, one thing that I try to find, like, okay, I disagree with Trump on a whole bunch of things, but you know what I agree with Trump on? He didn't get us into a war in 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, we've not gone to war in 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's been a long time since we haven't been engaged
some in conflict, something. And so I'm like, okay, I'll start with that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll start with that.
We have common ground with everybody. And it might just be that we're children of God. But find common ground and work from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. That's it. Hope you have a great week, great month. Thanksgiving's coming up, so be grateful for something that you have. And, I hope maybe we'll see you next week. Maybe we'll take Thanksgiving